48 48 48 48 48 48 48 48 48 48 48 48 48 48 48 48 48 4. Right now, millions of Americans are trapped in a financial habit they can't seem to escape. Every day, people swipe credit cards for groceries, gas, rent, fast food, online shopping, and even basic necessities. Not because they want luxury, but because cash simply isn't enough anymore. And while banks continue making billions from interest payments, average Americans are quietly falling deeper into debt. So why can't people stop using credit cards? Is it bad spending habits? Or is the modern American economy designed this way? In today's video, we're uncovering the real reason credit card use keeps exploding across America and why this financial trend could become one of the biggest economic dangers of the decade. Welcome back to the Dollar Pilot. Today we're talking about something affecting millions of Americans every single day: why Americans can't stop using credit cards. For decades, credit cards were marketed as financial convenience tools. They offered rewards points, cashback, travel miles, fraud protection, easy online shopping. And for many Americans, credit cards became deeply connected to everyday life. But something changed over the past few years. For millions of households, credit cards stopped being optional. They became necessary. And now America is experiencing one of the biggest credit card debt explosions in modern history. The question is, why? Why are so many Americans relying so heavily on borrowed money? The answer starts with one major issue. The cost of living in America increased dramatically. Groceries became more expensive. Rent surged. Mortgage payments rose. Healthcare costs climbed. Insurance prices jumped. Car payments increased. Utilities cost more. And inflation affected almost every category of normal life. At the same time, many Americans felt like their paychecks weren't stretching as far anymore. Even households earning decent salaries started feeling financially squeezed. This created a dangerous gap between income and expenses. And for millions of people, credit cards became the easiest way to close that gap temporarily. A grocery trip here, gas money there, an emergency repair, unexpected medical bills, higher utility payments. At first, the balances may seem manageable. But over time, something dangerous happens. Interest starts compounding. And right now, credit card interest rates in America are extremely high. Because the Federal Reserve aggressively raised interest rates to fight inflation, many credit card APRs climbed above 20%. Some Americans are paying nearly 30% interest. That means even relatively small balances can become financially overwhelming surprisingly fast. Many people now make monthly payments while barely reducing the actual debt itself. This creates what financial experts call a revolving debt trap. Another reason Americans rely heavily on credit cards is psychological. Swiping a card feels less painful than spending physical cash. Digital payments disconnect people emotionally from spending. You don't physically see money leaving your hands, and modern technology made spending incredibly frictionless. One tap, one click, one swipe. Food delivery apps, online shopping, subscription services, instant checkout systems. Everything is designed to encourage faster spending. And banks know this. Credit card companies spend billions of dollars studying consumer behavior. They understand psychology extremely well. Rewards programs, cashback offers, airline miles, sign-up bonuses, and promotional financing are all designed to make borrowing feel attractive and normal. The entire system encourages consumption. Another major factor is lifestyle inflation. Social media changed spending culture dramatically in America. People constantly compare themselves to others online. Luxury vacations, designer clothes, expensive apartments, fancy restaurants, new cars, perfect lifestyles. This creates enormous pressure to spend beyond realistic budgets. Many Americans quietly use debt to maintain appearances, even while struggling financially behind the scenes. And perhaps the most important point is this. Credit card dependency is no longer only affecting low-income households. Middle-class Americans are increasingly struggling too. Even people earning $70,000, $90,000, or over $100,000 annually sometimes rely heavily on debt because living costs became so expensive in many American cities. Places like New York, Los Angeles, Miami, San Francisco, Seattle, and Boston have extremely high housing and living expenses. A good salary no longer automatically guarantees financial comfort. Another hidden reason credit card use exploded is financial insecurity. Modern life feels unstable for many Americans. Layoffs, Automation, artificial intelligence replacing jobs, healthcare costs, economic uncertainty, recession fears. This creates anxiety-driven spending behavior. Many people keep using credit cards because they fear falling behind financially or because they feel they have no better alternative. Student loan debt also added enormous pressure. Millions of Americans restarted student loan payments after pandemic pauses ended. That created another major monthly expense for households already struggling with inflation. As a result, many borrowers leaned even more heavily on credit cards just to manage cash flow. Buy now, pay later. Services made the situation even more complicated. Now consumers can split purchases into smaller payments almost everywhere online. This creates the illusion that products are cheaper than they actually are. Instead of focusing on total cost, people focus on monthly affordability, and this behavior spreads debt across multiple platforms and accounts. One of the biggest hidden problems in America today is that many households don't fully realize how much total debt they're carrying. Another major issue is financial education. Most schools in America rarely teach budgeting, investing, interest rates, debt management, or personal finance deeply. As a result, millions of people enter adulthood surrounded by easy access to credit without fully understanding compound interest or long-term debt risks. Meanwhile, banks profit enormously from revolving balances and interest payments. Credit cards are one of the most profitable products in the financial industry. The system works extremely well for lenders when consumers stay in long-term debt cycles. Now, here's the important question. What happens if Americans continue relying heavily on credit cards? The danger becomes much larger if the economy slows down. As long as people remain employed, many households can continue making minimum payments. But if unemployment rises or another recession hits, debt pressure could quickly become much more dangerous. That's why economists closely monitor delinquency rates and missed payments, because rising defaults often signal growing financial stress beneath the surface of the economy. But there's also an important lesson here. Credit cards themselves are not automatically evil. When used responsibly, they can offer convenience, fraud protection, rewards, and financial flexibility. The real danger happens when debt becomes a permanent survival strategy instead of a temporary financial tool. And for millions of Americans, that's exactly what's happening now. People are borrowing not to build wealth, but simply to survive rising costs of living. At the Dollar Pilot, we believe understanding how debt works is one of the most important financial skills Americans can develop today, because in a debt-driven economy, financial discipline becomes a major long-term advantage. The truth is, many hardworking Americans are struggling financially not because they are irresponsible, but because the modern economy became dramatically more expensive while borrowing became easier than ever before. And until inflation, housing costs, and financial pressures improve, America's dependence on credit cards may continue growing quietly in the background. Stay informed, stay disciplined, and remember, financial freedom is not about how much you can borrow. It's about how much control you have over your future. 4949 4949 4949 4949 4949 4949 4949 4949 4949. Have you ever wondered why some billionaires seem to get richer no matter what happens to the economy? Recessions, inflation, stock market crashes, rising debt. Somehow the wealthiest people in America keep expanding their fortunes while average families struggle just to keep up. But what if the biggest secret about billionaire wealth isn't how much money they earn, but how differently they play the financial game? In today's video, we're uncovering the hidden systems, strategies, and economic advantages that quietly help America's richest people stay ahead while millions of others fall behind. Welcome back to The Dollar Pilot. Today, we're talking about something that fascinates millions of Americans: billionaire wealth. Every year, headlines show the richest people in America becoming even richer. Tech founders, investors, CEOs, hedge fund managers, and business owners continue building enormous fortunes, even during periods when average Americans are struggling with inflation, rising rent, debt, and financial stress. And naturally, many people ask the same question: how is this possible? The truth is, most billionaires do not simply work harder than everyone else. The real difference is that wealthy people often operate inside an entirely different financial system than the average American household. And once you understand how that system works, the modern economy starts making a lot more sense. One of the biggest hidden truths about billionaire wealth is ownership. Most wealthy people are not becoming rich from salaries alone. Instead, they own assets. That includes businesses, stocks, real estate, private companies, intellectual property, and investments that continue growing over time. Meanwhile, most middle-class Americans primarily rely on earned income from jobs. This creates a massive difference. When the stock market rises, asset owners become wealthier automatically. When home values rise, real estate investors gain wealth. When businesses expand, owners benefit directly from growth. This is why billionaire wealth can increase dramatically even during periods when wages barely move for average workers. Another important factor is compound growth. Many wealthy individuals understand that money grows faster when invested over long periods of time. Instead of spending every dollar earned, wealthy people often reinvest profits back into businesses, stocks, real estate, or other investments that generate additional returns. Over decades, compound growth becomes extremely powerful. This is one reason why wealth inequality in America has grown significantly over time. People who already own large amounts of assets benefit the most from economic expansion. Another hidden advantage is access. Wealthy individuals often have access to better financial opportunities, investment networks, business connections, and private deals that average Americans may never see. Large investors can purchase assets during economic downturns, while others are forced to sell because of financial pressure. In many cases, economic crises actually create opportunities for the wealthy. For example, during recessions, asset prices sometimes fall temporarily. Billionaires and large investment firms with strong cash reserves can buy stocks, businesses, or real estate at discounted prices. Then, when markets recover, their wealth grows even larger. Meanwhile, ordinary Americans may be dealing with layoffs, debt, or rising living expenses during the same period. Another major factor is taxation. This is one of the most misunderstood parts of billionaire wealth. Many billionaires pay lower effective tax rates than people expect because much of their wealth comes from investments rather than traditional salaries. In America, long-term capital gains are often taxed differently from ordinary income. Wealthy individuals also frequently borrow against assets instead of selling them outright. That allows them to access liquidity while avoiding certain taxable events. Now, to be clear, most of these strategies are legal, but critics argue the system heavily favors asset owners and investors over workers earning regular paychecks. And this debate has become increasingly political in the United States. Technology has also accelerated billionaire wealth dramatically. The internet created enormous scalability. A traditional small business may serve a local community, but modern tech companies can reach millions or even billions of users globally. This allows successful companies to generate extraordinary profits very quickly. Social media, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, digital advertising, e-commerce, and software platforms transformed how wealth is created in the modern economy. This is why so many billionaire fortunes today are connected to technology. But there's another side to this conversation that many Americans feel emotionally. While billionaire wealth rises, millions of households feel financially stuck. Housing costs exploded in many cities. Healthcare became more expensive. Student debt remains a major burden. Groceries, insurance, and childcare costs continue pressuring family budgets. As a result, many Americans feel like upward mobility has become harder than previous generations experienced. And social media intensifies this frustration. People constantly compare themselves to influencers, entrepreneurs, celebrities, and wealthy lifestyles online. That creates the illusion that extreme wealth is more common than it actually is. But the reality is, billionaire wealth represents a tiny percentage of society. Most Americans are simply trying to build financial stability, not private jets or billion-dollar companies. Still, there are important lessons average people can learn from how wealthy individuals think about money. One lesson is the importance of ownership. Many financial experts encourage Americans to focus on long-term investing, retirement accounts, index funds, home ownership when possible, and building assets over time instead of relying only on earned income. Another lesson is financial education. Wealthy people often spend enormous amounts of time understanding taxes, investing, business systems, and long-term financial planning. Meanwhile, many schools in America still do not teach basic personal finance effectively. That leaves millions of people entering adulthood without understanding compound interest, debt management, investing, or wealth-building strategies. And perhaps the biggest hidden truth is this: Billionaires do not always think like consumers. They often think like owners. Average consumers ask, "What can I buy?" Wealthy investors often ask, "What can I own that grows in value?" That mindset difference alone can completely change long-term financial outcomes. Now, of course, not every billionaire became wealthy ethically. There are debates about monopolies, labor practices, lobbying influence, political power, and economic inequality. Some critics argue modern capitalism increasingly concentrates wealth at the top. Others argue billionaire innovation creates jobs, technology, economic growth, and investment opportunities. Regardless of political opinion, one thing is clear. Understanding how wealth actually works is becoming more important than ever in today's economy, because the modern financial system rewards knowledge, ownership, patience, and long-term strategy far more than most people realize. At the Dollar Pilot, we believe financial education is one of the most powerful tools Americans can have right now. Because once you understand how money moves, how assets grow, and how wealth is built over time, you stop viewing the economy emotionally and start seeing the systems behind it. The truth is, billionaire wealth is not only about income, it's about ownership, leverage, investing, tax structures, access, and time. And until more Americans fully understand those systems, the wealth gap may continue growing for years to come. Stay informed, stay disciplined, and remember, financial freedom starts with understanding the rules of the game. 550505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505050505 at monthly car payments and thinking, how is this even possible? New cars cost more than ever, used car prices exploded, insurance keeps rising, and interest rates are making basic transportation feel like a luxury. And the scary part is, for many Americans, owning a car is no longer just expensive. It's becoming financially dangerous. In today's video, we're uncovering why cars suddenly became so unaffordable in America and what this says about the future of the U.S. economy. Welcome back to The Dollar Pilot. Today we're talking about something millions of Americans feel every single month, the crushing cost of owning a car. For decades, cars represented freedom in America. Owning a vehicle meant independence, opportunity, mobility, and convenience. In many parts of the United States, having a car isn't optional. It's necessary for work, school, shopping, and everyday life. But today, something has changed. Millions of Americans are now struggling to afford vehicles that would have seemed normal just a few years ago. And the numbers are shocking. New car prices in America have climbed dramatically over the past several years. Even average vehicles now often cost tens of thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, used car prices also surged after supply shortages and inflation disrupted the market. For many families, the dream of owning a reliable car now feels financially overwhelming. One major reason is inflation. Since the pandemic, prices increased across nearly every part of the economy. Steel, computer chips, shipping costs, labor expenses, energy prices, and manufacturing costs all rose significantly. Modern vehicles also contain more advanced technology than ever before. Large touchscreens, cameras, sensors, driver assistance systems, and software features increase production costs. As a result, automakers raised prices aggressively, but rising sticker prices are only part of the problem. Interest rates have made the situation even worse. Because the Federal Reserve increased interest rates to fight inflation, auto loans became far more expensive. Many Americans who finance vehicles now face much higher monthly payments than buyers did just a few years ago. Even people with decent credit scores are paying significantly more in interest. This means Americans are not only paying more for the vehicle itself, they're also paying more to borrow the money. And this creates a dangerous financial situation. Some households are now taking out extremely long auto loans lasting 6, 7, or even 8 years just to make monthly payments appear affordable. But longer loans often mean paying thousands more in total interest over time. In many cases, Americans remain trapped in car payments almost continuously. Another major issue is insurance. Car insurance costs have exploded across many parts of the country. Repair costs increase because modern vehicles are more technologically complex. Even small accidents can now involve expensive sensors, cameras, and electronic systems. At the same time, labor shortages, higher healthcare costs, extreme weather events, lawsuits, and vehicle thefts also pushed insurance premiums higher. For many Americans, insurance alone now feels like a second car payment. And then there's maintenance. Gas prices remain volatile. Tires, repairs, oil changes, batteries, and replacement parts all became more expensive. Owning a car today often feels like managing an endless stream of expenses. This is especially difficult for younger Americans. Many Gen Z and millennial consumers already struggle with student loans, high rent, rising grocery costs, and expensive healthcare. Adding a large car payment on top of those expenses can quickly destroy a monthly budget, and social pressure makes the problem even worse. In America, cars are often tied to status and identity. Social media constantly promotes luxury vehicles, expensive trucks, sports cars, and high-end lifestyles. Many consumers feel pressured to upgrade vehicles even when their finances realistically cannot support it. At the same time, automakers increasingly focused on larger, more expensive vehicles because they generate higher profits. Affordable compact cars slowly disappeared from many dealerships. Instead, the market became filled with expensive SUVs, trucks, and premium features. As a result, budget-conscious buyers now have fewer affordable options. Another hidden problem is negative equity. Many Americans owe more on their car loans than the vehicles are actually worth. This happens because vehicles lose value over time, while high-interest loans keep balances elevated. When people trade in vehicles early, leftover debt often rolls into the next loan. That creates a dangerous cycle where debt keeps growing from one vehicle purchase to another. And economists are paying close attention to this trend. Rising delinquencies on auto loans could become a warning sign for broader financial stress in the U.S. economy. If unemployment rises during an economic slowdown, many households could struggle to keep up with payments. Now here's the important question. Why does this issue feel so emotionally frustrating for Americans? Because cars are no longer viewed as luxuries in many places. They're essential. In cities with weak public transportation systems, people need vehicles simply to participate in normal daily life. So, when transportation becomes unaffordable, people feel financially trapped. And this situation reflects a larger economic reality happening across America right now. Housing costs rose, healthcare costs rose, groceries rose, insurance rose, education costs rose. And now transportation costs are hitting millions of families at the same time. This is why even Americans earning decent incomes often feel financially stretched despite working full-time. But there are also important lessons here. Many financial experts now encourage consumers to focus less on status vehicles and more on long-term financial stability. Reliable used cars, lower monthly payments, shorter loan terms, better budgeting, and avoiding unnecessary upgrades are becoming increasingly important strategies. Because in today's economy, financial flexibility matters more than appearances. At the Dollar Pilot, we believe understanding how money works is more important than ever before. And the truth is, the modern American economy is becoming increasingly difficult for households trying to balance debt, inflation, and rising living costs all at once. Owning a car used to represent freedom, but for many Americans today, it also represents financial pressure, long-term debt, and economic uncertainty. And until inflation, interest rates, and vehicle costs become more manageable, millions of Americans may continue feeling like the dream of affordable car ownership is slipping further away. Stay informed, stay disciplined, and remember, financial freedom is not about driving the most expensive car. It's about keeping control of your future. 5, Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out your company just eliminated hundreds of jobs overnight. No warning, no backup plan, no guarantee you're safe next. Right now, millions of Americans are living with that exact fear every single day. Layoffs are spreading across industries, AI is changing the workforce faster than expected, and even people with stable careers are starting to feel uncertain about their future. But the real reason Americans fear losing their jobs goes much deeper than most people realize. And today, we're breaking it all down. Welcome back to the Dollar Pilot. Today we're talking about something millions of Americans are quietly worried about right now: job security. For decades, many people believed that if you worked hard, stayed loyal to your company, and built experience, your job would remain stable. But in today's economy, that feeling of stability is disappearing fast. Even Americans with college degrees, strong resumes, and years of experience are starting to feel uncertain about the future. And honestly, there's a reason for that fear. The modern American job market is changing rapidly. One of the biggest reasons people feel anxious is the wave of layoffs happening across major industries. Over the last few years, companies in tech, finance, media, retail, and even healthcare have announced massive job cuts. Many businesses expanded aggressively during the pandemic economy, but when inflation rose and interest rates increased, companies started cutting costs fast. And unfortunately, payroll is often the first place companies look. What makes this even more stressful is how unpredictable layoffs have become. In the past, layoffs usually happened during clear economic recessions. Today, companies sometimes report strong profits while still laying off thousands of workers to satisfy investors or improve stock prices. That creates a dangerous feeling for employees. No matter how hard I work, I still may not be safe. Another major reason Americans fear losing their jobs is the rising cost of living. Rent, groceries, healthcare, insurance, gas, and utilities have become dramatically more expensive across the country. Many households are already living paycheck to paycheck. So losing a job today feels far more dangerous than it did years ago. For many Americans, even missing 1 or 2 paychecks could create serious financial problems. That pressure creates constant anxiety. And then there's artificial intelligence. AI is now becoming one of the biggest fears in the workforce. People are watching software automate tasks that once required full-time employees. Customer service, graphic design, writing, data analysis, coding, marketing, and administrative work are all changing rapidly because of AI tools. Now, AI is not replacing every job overnight, but many workers fear companies may eventually need fewer employees to do the same amount of work. That uncertainty is making workers nervous across multiple industries. Another important issue is that loyalty between companies and workers has changed. Years ago, many Americans expected long careers at one company with pensions and strong benefits. But today, companies often prioritize flexibility and cost-cutting over long-term employee stability. Workers have seen profitable corporations suddenly announce layoffs with little warning. As a result, trust in corporate job security has weakened dramatically, and younger Americans especially understand this reality. Millennials and Gen Z workers grew up watching economic instability happen repeatedly: the 2008 financial crisis, the pandemic shutdowns, inflation, layoffs, and rising debt. Many younger workers no longer believe any job is truly secure. That's why side hustles, freelancing, remote work, and multiple income streams have exploded across America. People are trying to protect themselves financially because they know relying on one paycheck feels risky. At the same time, many Americans also feel trapped in jobs they dislike because they fear the economy may worsen. Healthcare plays a major role too. In the United States, millions of people receive health insurance through their employer. Losing a job often means losing healthcare coverage as well. That creates even more fear for families dealing with medical costs, children, prescriptions, or ongoing treatments. For many workers, a job is not just income anymore. It's survival. And there's another hidden issue many people don't talk about enough: burnout. Americans today are working longer hours while feeling less financially secure. Productivity expectations have increased, but many workers feel their wages haven't kept pace with inflation. People are exhausted physically, mentally, and financially. Yet despite working harder, many still fear being replaced. Social media has also intensified job anxiety. Every day, Americans scroll through videos of layoffs, recession warnings, economic predictions, and AI discussions online. Constant exposure to negative financial news creates even more stress and uncertainty. Even workers who currently have stable jobs may still feel nervous about what could happen next. And honestly, some of those fears are understandable. The economy today feels very different from what previous generations experienced. Home ownership is harder, debt levels are higher, emergency savings are lower, living expenses are rising faster than comfort levels. That means job loss now carries far greater emotional and financial consequences. But here's something important people should remember. Fear alone does not create financial security. Preparation does. This is why more Americans are now focusing on emergency savings, skill development, networking, side income, and financial literacy. Workers are realizing they cannot fully control the economy, but they can improve their ability to adapt. Learning new skills, understanding technology, reducing unnecessary debt, and building multiple income streams are becoming critical survival strategies in the modern economy. And despite all the fear, it's also important to understand that the economy is constantly evolving. Some industries are shrinking, but others are growing rapidly. Healthcare, cybersecurity, skilled trades, AI-related jobs, energy, logistics, and specialized technical fields continue expanding. The workers who adapt fastest often create the strongest long-term opportunities for themselves. At the Dollar Pilot, we believe the biggest financial advantage today is not just earning money, it's becoming resilient in an unpredictable economy. Because the truth is, millions of Americans fear losing their jobs, not because they're weak workers, but because the modern economy has become more unstable, expensive, and competitive than ever before. And until economic pressure, inflation, and workforce uncertainty become more manageable, that fear will likely continue spreading across the country. Stay informed, stay adaptable, and remember, in today's economy, your greatest financial asset may no longer be your job alone, but your ability to evolve when the economy changes.